All right, we're back in my barn working on a new project. I need to bend some sheet metal. I don't have a lot of room in here for a regular bending brake, so I made something for my my press here. Problem is, the thing that I made is 14 inches wide, pretty simple, but it did the job for me until now. I need 21 inches. This is 22 inches between these uprights. So I don't have room to put the fancy things in here with the round bars to align everything. So I'm going to make something similar to this, but with some upgrades on it. And give you a quick overview here. Basically the bottom piece, just a piece of angle iron welded in here. And I made this a nice snug fit to the round piece. I didn't have any round stock that fitted exactly, so I just took some flat stock and welded it together to make it fit. I used two different screws here. Originally I had two thumb screws and I kept on doing the wrong one. This one holds this piece onto the pin here on the press, and this holds my top die in place. So that is easily changeable. This was for cutting or for bending longer pieces of metal, and when I wanted to make a box shape, I could put this in kind of like a finger brake. I made a couple different sizes of these. I ended up a couple different widths on these, but I had to taper this so that when the box came up, it didn't hit these. But it works pretty well when it's short enough. I did add another piece. When I wanted to make a sharper bend, I found this piece of angle iron that had a nice sharp corner on it and made that out of it. And when I did, I added these supports to push up against here to keep it aligned a little bit better. So I'm going to do the same thing with the new one, but I'm going to make it longer, stiffer, and hopefully improve the way that this fits in there. A couple other things I did with this. Some people get a lot fancier than I do. I just took a piece of 1/2-inch electrical conduit, drilled holes all the way through it, stuck a piece of, I think that's 1/4-inch rod, whatever I had available, stuck that through it, peened the ends over so it wouldn't come through. And you can't see it there. I'll try and get a close-up. But I cut like an L-shaped slot in the back, put this on, turned it over, and then bent it. And by bending that little tab over, it won't come off now. I can't get it off. I mean, obviously I can unbend it and it'll come off. But that works fine. Gives me plenty of leverage to open and close it. And for hanging this up, I originally took copper and just bent it around the pipe here. The rubber is well attached, so the rubber holds it. And then they ended up, the copper was a little bit soft, so this is actually, what, 3 30-seconds TIG welding rod. And it just drops over the support here. So easy, cheap, does the job. So let me get to working on the newer, wider fixture. And I'm not going to show you my cutting and welding, but I will show you the results and why I'm doing it the way I'm doing it. All right, I have my base plate cut, and I want it to just barely fit in there, just a little bit of clearance. I was shooting for an 1/8. There's probably about a 1/16 inch in clearance. I'm using 1/4-inch stock this time. I used 3/16 last time, and it warped and it was okay, but it was borderline. And this is going to be longer, so I went with 1/4-inch this time, and rounded the edges just a little bit, just so that I don't have a sharp edge catching that side piece here and catching the paint as I go in. It'll get scratched up eventually probably, but I'm not too worried about that. You can always find more paint. So I got that, and to check my thoughts here, I'm going to be putting more pieces in, and I want to make sure that everything's going to fit. Oh, there's one more piece I needed to put in there. And I wanted to make sure that that would clear. So we're good, and I can continue on. Next thing I need to do is I want to make some brackets around the sides here that are going to help me position it. And I thought I had some 1 1/4 stock, because these are 1 inch thick. I need something a little bit taller than this. and I don't. I have 1-inch stock. So I'm gonna do what I've often done before, change my plan, and go with some angle iron that I happen to have that is plenty wide, and use that instead. So when we get to that, we'll come back and show you what I did. All right, my side support / alignment brackets are cut and ready to weld. I was originally planning just a flat piece that I would cut the edges, cut the ends, or bend them over, whatever, probably cut them and weld them. And like I said, I didn't have the 1.5 inch stock that I thought I had, or 1.25 inches would have been enough. All I had was 1 inch. So I got this angle iron, which as it happens is a chrome moly, which makes it a little more difficult to cut, and I'm going to have to drill some 4 holes in these pieces here. I numbered them as I did them so that these are mirror opposite, and I didn't want to accidentally end up cutting like three of the same side. So I just numbered them just to be sure that I wasn't mixing them up. So those are ready to weld. I'll weld them up, drill them, and show you what I'm doing to make them usable for alignment and support. They'll give me more support than this plain straight 1.5 inch would, but now that it's an angle iron, these are going to be supporting the ends of my base, and with the angle iron I'm going to get a little more strength there. I'm not sure it would have mattered, but I'll get a little bit more. This is the way I marked the end pieces to cut and fit my base pipe. Just set them in there. I had to set this on an angle so I could fit it in. And then just reach up underneath, mark it. I got my line, and I'll cut a little short of that line and file it down till it fits just right. All right, I've got my end pieces almost done. They're welded up, and I ground the weld flush on the back side here because that's going to be sitting down. These welds I'm not going to worry about. They're just out in the open. I'll leave them there, extra strength and less work. I've got the notches cut in them, and let me take you over to my press and show you what those are for. So my end pieces are going to sit in here against the uprights. This is just the base plate. That will sit in there. And I'll have bolts through here that I can adjust that and hold it in position. Because one of the problems I had with the first one that I did that was shorter is I didn't have any good way to keep it from moving as I was trying to put the part in there and get it all set up. So now that I'm going the full length, I'm going to put these guides, if you will, in here. They will also provide some support. They were primarily intended as guides. And with the screws on each side, or bolts on each side, I can adjust that to fit whatever I've got in here, and then it'll stay in place. So my end pieces are done. The only thing I need to do is tap the holes here for the bolts. I'm planning to use 1/4 inch fine thread bolts, but until I actually have the bolts, I'm not going to tap them. I'm planning to use fine thread because it's such thin material. And if I don't have enough thread engagement still, then I'll just weld a nut on the outside here. I was very careful to make sure that these were at the same height as those 1-inch plates on the press. And I filed them to finish this up. I didn't just take a big grinder and whack away at it. So it's a nice snug fit all the way around. Edges here as well as the bottom here of the slot. So anyways, those are done. And let me show you what I'm planning to do with the new one, which also means I'll have to show you what issues I had with the old one. This was the old one I had, which was too narrow for the opening, so there was nothing to hold it in place, as I explained. Also, it was a little bit on the flimsy side. I made it out of 3/16 material, and the height of these side supports is less than 1/2 inch. And you can see it's bent right now. It's rocking. It needs to be straightened out. So the other problem I had was when I made some things with very small flanges, I had to make them with a larger flange. Had to be at least 5/8 of an inch. I basically went for 3/4 of an inch because I didn't want the edge of the flange coming below this surface until it was all the way down. Otherwise, it was too hard to keep it in position. So what I'm planning to do is change some of those features, make it a little stronger. So I've used 1/4 inch material here, and I took, since I had 4 feet of this, actually I have 2 4-foot pieces, I cut lengthwise, and these are about 5/8 of an inch wide, just a little bit narrower than the width of this piece of angle iron. And I did that because I was going to weld it and I didn't want to have to grind all the welds down. So that doubled up piece will get welded to the base plate, and then this I will initially tack on to the top of that, and then I'm going to cut some 1-inch pieces, roughly 1 inch, pieces that will come up along this side and weld to this. Same way I did this, except they'll be a lot longer and therefore stronger. So between the fact that I'll have longer, thicker pieces on the sides, that I've got these 2 pieces here, I think it's going to be a lot stronger, a lot less likely to bend than this old one. So that's the plan. Basically at this point all I need to do is weld this on, and then cut my side pieces and weld them on. So I'm going to get to that, and we'll come back when I'm done. Well, for some reason I lost the audio on this, so I'll do my best for the voiceover here. This was my first attempt. The base is completed. I made the top piece there for top die. I'm not sure how well it's going to hold up, so I may take those supports that you see on my old part and add those to this newer part. But for now, I'm going to give it a test. I'm going to use 16 gauge aluminum, 16 gauge steel, and see if I'm successful at bending it. So we're going to stick it in there and start pressing it down. And you'll note as I start pressing on this that I switch over to using 2 hands. I'm having to put a lot of pressure on this. Here we're adding the handle onto it here. And if you look close here in a minute, I add 2 hands to pull on it. There we go. I'm taking a lot of pressure. And it's not doing a very good job. And trying some more. It's just I can tell I'm putting a lot of pressure. And if you look real close, I think you can see the upper die is actually bending there. That's what I'm checking right now. And yep, it's bent. So we're going to take it out, check it, see how much of a bend I got on it, but you can tell it's not going to be good. And you see the ends didn't bend more than about 45 degrees, so not very successful at all. I'm going to have to do something to improve this. All right, something happened to the audio on that last one. Obviously, the bend didn't work too well. I want to try and finish it up, see if I can straighten that out. I took these supports off of the other one, put them on here, and let's give it a try. When I straightened this out, I was able to turn it upside down and straighten it. So let's see what happens. Yeah, let's hope it works better this time. Nope, I'm bending this now. Wow. That's with 16 gauge. I thought that would work with no problem. So, I'm going to have to find a way to straighten this out. That's going to be fun. See if this is bent again. It probably is because this is bent. I'm really surprised. I didn't think that would be such a problem. Well, I slept on this last night and realized that this is a 1/4 inch plate here, bar. This is 16 gauge, which is approximately a 1/16 of an inch. And there's 2 sides to that, so a 1/16 and a 1/16. You got another nearly 1/8 inch. So you're up to 3/8 of an inch. And the gap across the top of that piece of angle iron on the bottom is only 1/2 inch. So since this was a rounded edge on here, I basically wasn't bending it, I was squeezing it. So I put a sharp edge on that. We're going to try it again. I have a 50-50 chance, I figure, of having it work. And if it doesn't, then I'm going to get rid of that 1/2 inch angle iron and go back to 3/4 inch. So let's see what happens. No, I don't think that's going to do it. It helped, but I don't think that's going to do it. I'm going to put it in this way and try it, just see what we get. Start with something fresh, see how that works out. No, it's not going to do it. Nope, not at all. I think this is bending again. I don't know if I'm going to be able to bend 16 gauge with that. Maybe if I reinforce this bar. All right, so I've established that I cannot bend a 22-inch piece of 16 gauge in here, but I did try a piece that's 11 inches long, piece I had around, and that bent that with no problem. So I'm going to try a piece of 18 gauge. I cut this just to test. Hate to waste it, but I need to know if this will work. So we'll just set that in there and see what happens with our 18 gauge. Yeah, it's not turning these edges up, and it looks like that is flexing. Probably because this was bent, because it's not taking a whole lot of force to do it. That's about the end. Not too bad. I think if I straighten this out so that this wouldn't bend, that'll do 18 gauge, which is what I need. So now my debate is, do I want to leave it at that or go to a larger piece of angle iron in there to see if I can do 16 gauge and make this a little easier. Here's a quick tool tip for you guys. This is WD-40. Look at the stuff on the bottom. Doesn't take a lot to mix it up, but you should always make sure you mix your WD-40 a little bit before you use it. Otherwise, you're taking all that stuff off the bottom, and the next time you use it, or as you get down to the last part of your bottle or can, you're not going to be getting the full benefit of real WD-40. Well, I went ahead and straightened this bar out. I put a couple of blocks and I got a bottle jack that I pushed up in the center on the post back here and got that straightened out. There might be still a little bit of a curvature in this, but I tried it again and it came out pretty good. It's not perfect, but it's something that could be finished up by hand if necessary. However, this is pretty borderline. So I think I'm going to go ahead and go through the effort, cut this 1/2 inch angle iron out of here, and put in some 3/4 inch angle iron. I got a lot of welds to cut out, clean up, but I think it'll be better in the long run. Well, I got the 1/2 inch angle iron out of there. As you can see, I kind of made a mess of it in the process. Surprise, surprise. it wasn't too hard getting it out or cutting the welds along here. The real problem getting it out was that I had welded the bottom part to the plate in the bottom here. So I couldn't get to them to cut it. I had to pry it out. And in the process of prying it out, I broke one of my screwdrivers. It doesn't maybe show up real well in the video, but this one's about a 1/4 inch shorter now than the other one. And so I had to refinish the end here so it's usable. Anyways, I finally got it out. Put the 3/4 inch in. And what I did, after my initial tacks, I decided that in case I want to use this to bend something a little heavier. Remember, this is made for sheet metal. This is not made for bending 1/4 inch brackets. But if I want to do something a little bit heavier than my normal 18 gauge sheet metal, I figure it's going to have to be done in the center, and it'll be smaller than my 18. Like I said, I found out I can do 16 gauge with this. But it'll be, the larger metal, or the thicker metal, will have to be shorter. So what I did is I welded 2 inches wide, an inch each side of center, then individual welds 1/2 inch apart, 1 inch apart, and then 2 inches apart the rest of the way. So I didn't want to weld the whole thing. As I did those, I did about half of them on this side, and then took it over and checked, and it had warped, so I straightened it out, finished them up, straightened it out again, did the other side the same way. I was concerned that if I welded the whole thing up, finished all of these welds that I do have, that it would warp it enough that I'd have a hard time straightening it out. Don't know if that's true or not, but I didn't want to take the chance. And that's also the reason, in addition to saving some weld material and some gas, that I just did individual tacks along here. That should be plenty strong enough for anything I'll do that's that long. And like I said, saves me weld material and gas and time. So that should be the finished product right there. And we need to go test it now, see how it works. Success! I straightened this top die, punch, whatever, straightened that out. This edge is pretty sharp, not razor sharp, but I didn't want to press on it and damage it. So I just ground that until this edge was straight. This top edge is bent. So I did that. I put the 3/4 inch angle iron in, stuck a piece of 16 gauge in here, and there's the result. This was an old one that I tested, which didn't work too well. But this one came out quite nice. 90 degrees pretty much all the way. Maybe a couple degrees short on the ends. But I'm happy. Came out pretty good. Well, I did some more checking and testing with this and discovered that the bottom of this main die down here, when that was flat, the angle iron was actually tapering down at the ends. So that was part of the reason that I wasn't getting a complete bend on the ends. So I bent this until the angle iron was completely straight, and then I ground the center so that it's flat from about here to here, about 3/4 of the distance from in the center. And then this was getting a little bit thin. I could see that it was thinning out, so I added some weld. So even when these 1 inch spacers are pushed out, they're going to come out to about here anyways, and that part's flat. So then I added a little weld on the end so that it would be flat all the way out to my supports on the end. So after doing that, I tested the 16 gauge pieces that had not completely bent up on the ends, put that in here, and it pretty much straightened them right out. They're completely square now. And then I decided to go ahead and try some 1/8 inch steel. That's 4 inches wide, and I bent that up to 90 degrees. It worked out well. So this is even better than I thought. And would I go back to the 1/2 inch angle iron? Probably not. I'm going to stick with the 3/4. I think that's a lot safer. Well, I decided to try a couple of thicker pieces, And I started with this 3/16, and I couldn't go too far because this got in the way as it bent up, but it was pretty much at its limit. You can see that it was kind of starting to dig in there. Some of that's just through the paint, but it was starting to dig into the metal as well. And then I tried a 1/4 inch. This is a 1/4 inch by inch and a half. And this was definitely beyond its limits. I got it about that far, but it was definitely digging in back here, and you wouldn't be able to go any further with that. So that's pretty much the limits of this thing, but it'll do, I think, everything I need to do. Well, I hope this will be useful for some of you out there. Hopefully you learned something. I learned something. I learned quite a bit. So please consider hitting that like button, subscribing. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.